Alright students, now we will move to the second part of the story, the third level. I turned towards the ticket windows knowing that here on the third level at Grand Central, I could buy tickets that would take Louisa and me anywhere in the US. We wanted to go in the year 1894 and I wanted 2 tickets to Galesburg, Illinois. Have you ever been there? It's a wonderful town still, with big old frame houses, huge lawns, and tremendous, here tremendous means huge, trees whose branches meet overhead and roof the streets. And in 1894, summer evenings were twice as long and people sat out on their lawns. The men smoking cigars and talking quietly. The women waving palm leaf fans with the fireflies all around in a peaceful world. To be back there with the First World War still 20 years off and World War II over 40 years ahead in the future. I wanted 2 tickets for that. So you see, Charlie understood by looking at the newspaper the world which was obsolete by the time he was at 31 years of age, and after looking at all the place all around the place and the people and their dress up, their kind of attire and the things that were used and the kind of locomotives, everything, and at last looking at the world, he understood that he had time traveled to 1894. Everything was old fashioned at that time. So finally, what did he do? I told you, he was always inclined to go to a place where it was all peaceful and heavenly. Everything was very serene and tranquil. And Galesburg was such a place where his childhood had passed. So he wanted to go to Galesburg, Illinois. Okay, and because at Galesburg still the places were much more empty and the people were so friendly, people did not indulge in warfare and fellow fighting, so everything was like very peaceful and heavenly in Galesburg in Illinois in the year 1894. So he wanted to go to Galesburg and he was about to cut 2 tickets for himself and his wife Louisa. So the very thought of time traveling to 1894 was itself very interesting and exquisite, because the First World War, which started in 1914 and lasted till 1918, was still 20 years ahead, and World War II was 40 years ahead. World War II started in the year 1939 and continued till 1945. So he was, feeling very nice. The scenery over there was beautiful. There were huge, big trees that created a canopy overhead. So the place was peaceful and it was beckoning Charlie as always. Now you look, just now Charlie spoke about our president Cleveland. So you see, Cleveland was an American politician and lawyer who was the 22nd and 24th president of the US, the only president in American history to serve 2 consecutive tenure in office from 1885 to 1889 and 1893 to 1897. So in the world, the boy was holding a newspaper, The World, and it was said something about President Grover Cleveland, who was the acting president in his second term from 1893 to 1897, and he had traveled to 1894. So next, look, I have taken some pictures of the beautiful houses in Galesburg and its beautiful scenery. So you see this picture, this is a rail station in Galesburg, Illinois. You see the rail station in the 1800s. This is another picture of Galesburg. So you see, now this is the World June edition, 11th June 1894 edition of the World newspaper that Charlie saw over there. and he was sure that he had time traveled through the third level of the Grand Central Terminus. Now, the clerk figured the fare. He glanced at my fancy headband, but he figured the fare, and I had enough for 2 coach tickets one way. But when I counted out the money and looked up, the clerk was staring at me. So the clerk figured the fare for 2 tickets to Gallisburg, and he looked at Charlie's fancy headband, which was much more modern to them. So finally, Charlie was counting the money, and the clerk was staring at him. While he was counting the money, he nodded at the bills. "That ain't money, mister. And if you're trying to skin me, you won't get very far." And he glanced at the cash drawer beside him. Of course, the money was old-style bills, half again as big as the money we use nowadays and different looking. I turned away and got out fast. There's nothing nice about jail, even in 1894. So you see, Charlie was using his sense of humor. So as he was counting the money he had belonged to 1900. So the clerk looked at the money and told, "Do not try to be oversmart with me, mister. You're not going to get away with it." Readily, Charlie understood that, oh my God, I'm using the modern money that had not been introduced by that time. So he readily decided to leave the place, because there is nothing good about jail even in the previous days. And that was that. I left the same way I came, I suppose. Next day during lunch hour, I drew $300 out of the bank, nearly all we had, and bought old-style currency. That really worried my psychiatrist friend. Next day, he decided to change his new dollars with the older dollars, with the old currency, so that he could buy the ticket along with his wife and go to Gallisburg. You can buy old money at almost any coin dealers, but you have to pay a premium. So his psychiatrist was concerned, oh my God, what this man is up to. He has started believing about the third level. So let's see what happens next. My $300 bought less than $200 in old style bills, but I did not care, because expenditure about grocery and everything was much less once he reaches in 1894. So in 1894, $200 was like, millions. So eggs were 13 cents a dozen in 1894. Sorry. So you see. So he thought that, let me not worry, because eggs were 13 cents a dozen in 1894. But I have never again found the corridor that leads to the third level at Grand Central Station. So that day he returned back and he changed his currency. But then after that he never found the same tunnel, the same corridor which took him to the third level. So he wanted to go to Gallisburg of 1894 with his wife and lead a peaceful life there. Although I have tried often enough, Louisa was pretty worried when I told her all this, and I did not want me to look for the third level anymore. And after a while, I stopped. I went back to my stamps. So it was a long time that he tried to find the third level, but then Louisa was a caring wife and she was concerned about her husband's psyche. So finally, she requested him not to search for a thing that was practically not present. So finally, he came back to his hobby of stamp collection. But now we are both looking every weekend, because now we have proof that the third level is still there. But suddenly, there came something in their hands which acted as a proof that yes, the third level is really there and time travel is all real. What happened? What was the proof? Let's check it out. My friend Sam Weiner disappeared. Nobody knew where, but I sort of suspected because Sam is a city boy and I used to tell him about Gallisburg. I went to school there and he always said he liked the sound of the place. And that's where he is all right in 1894. So what happened? His friend Sam Weiner disappeared and Charlie believed that Sam Weiner had time traveled to 1894 after he heard from Charlie about Gallisburg. Sam Weiner was a city boy and his heart also desired and yearned to go to a countryside living a peaceful life. So Charlie had described to him about 1894 Gallisburg and how peaceful and tranquilizing a place it was with full of merry people. So he also wanted to go, and I'm sure after the proof that I got just now, we will see the proof that he is all right in 1894. Because one night, fussing with my stamp collection, I found, well, do you know what a first day cover is? When a new stamp is issued, stamp collectors. So you see what happened. One day, as he was going through his stamp collection that he had also inherited from his grandfather, so basically that collection also consisted his grandfather's collection. So what is a first day cover? Charlie is telling, when a new stamp is being introduced, the stamp collectors, what they do, they buy that new stamp and use them to mail envelopes to themselves on the very first day of the sale, so that the postmark proves the day that that particular envelope or used that particular stamp at the day when it was introduced. So it is like the first day first show, the movies. The envelope is called a first day cover. They are never opened. You just put blank paper in the envelope. That night, among my oldest first day covers, I found one that should not have been there. But there it was. It was there because someone had mailed it to my grandfather at his home in Gallisburg in 1894. And that's what the address on the envelope said. And it had been there since 18 July 1894. The postmark showed that, yet I did not remember it at all. How is it possible? So Charlie got a first day cover in his grandfather's collection, which is also his collection included, which was previously not there. So somebody must have mailed it recently. So if it is a recent mail, it must have been somewhere around 1900. But the date read 1894. Why? Because this is the proof that his friend Sam Weiner had probably found the third level, and he went there and he had mailed a letter, a first day cover, in his grandfather's mail, because his grandfather was there at that time. The same address where Charlie resided. So it was there in the stamp collection. But he never found it before because it is a recent mail. So you see, the stamp was a 6-cent, dull brown with a picture of President Garfield. We will come to know who is President Garfield. President Garfield was the president of US when that particular stamp was probably introduced. Naturally, when the envelope came to Granddad in the mail, it was right in the collection and stayed there till I took it out and opened. The paper inside wasn't blank. It read something. Let us see. This is the letter and this is the proof that the third level exists. Look, Charlie, I got to wishing that you were right. Then I got to believing you were right. And Charlie, it is true. I found the third level. I have been here 2 weeks, and right now down the street at the deli, someone is playing a piano and they are all out on the front porch singing, "Sing Nellie Home." And I'm invited over for lemonade. Come on back, Charlie and Louisa. Keep looking till you find the third level. It's worth it, believe me. And the note is signed Sam. So, after Sam traveled to Gallisburg in 1894, he wrote to Charlie which could not come to Charlie because in 1894 Charlie was not born. So it reached the mail of his granddad where he was born, and from his collection he got it, because his collection is what he had inherited from his grandfather and is being carrying it forward. So at the stamp and coin store I went out, I found out that Sam bought $800 worth of old style currency. So much that ought to set him up in a nice little hay, feed and grain business, that is an agricultural business back in 1894, a farming business. He always said that that's what he really wished he could do, and he certainly can't go back to his old business. Now, what is the old business? The agricultural business that Sam did before he became a psychiatrist. So not in Galesburg, Illinois in 1894. His old business? Why? Sam was my psychiatrist. So his old business was not, treating patients with mental disorders or talking to them, being a counselor. His previous business was, he belonged to a family of farmers, farming business. So it is what he did after he time traveled to 1894. So students, hope you have understood the story, which is a science fiction, the third level. I will end the class with the song Sing Nelly Home for you all. Bye bye.